I think every human being, when they're born, their DNA is aligned a certain way, and it's aligned with a set of values. Your only job as the leader is to beat the drum and never stop on the values.
This was a lesson you shared with me years ago. And every time that I have violated my doorman, because my doorman knows my values, every time I let somebody else into my life that wasn't aligned with my values, it led to a negative outcome.
What my values are. And I tell them, if you see daddy not honoring his values, kick him in the shins.
Welcome to Tech Talk with Jared Yellen, my NASDAQ community. I'm so excited to share a very special guest with you. This is a man that I've known now for over 10 years. He's an extraordinary entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, someone that works with some of the most impactful entrepreneurs around the world. He's also in the private equity industry. He buys and sells businesses, but most importantly, this is a man that is really clear on his values. His pursuit for positive impact is just absolutely unmatched. And you're about to learn so much from the one and only Rick Sapio. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Jared,
so appreciate you being here. So listen, you're a purebred like me. When did it start? Like, what was the genesis for you as an entrepreneur?
You know, it's funny how in life we think about negatives, but the reality is those negatives turn out to be the biggest positives.
Yeah.
And I'm the seventh of 9 kids from a really, obviously a big family, but when I was 11, my dad came down with incurable cancer. And from the first time he knew about the cancer, they gave him 6 weeks to live. So he ended up living 2.5 years. And it was over those 2.5 years that I changed as a human being because, you know, from a big family, dad was the main breadwinner, and now he's gonna be gone. So when you have some runway, we thought it was 6 weeks, it ended up being 2.5 years. That's when a lot of the fire in me was born.
Wow.
And it was right after he died. It was the summer between 7th and 8th grade that I met a mentor who changed the direction of my life.
Wow.
And I encourage everybody
Yeah.
to seek mentors, listen to mentors, go to mentors with questions that are important. I can't believe how many times people ask me to mentor them and they come to a meeting and they don't have any questions.
But how did that happen? So you're young. I mean, between 7th and 8th grade, you're like 14 years old. Like, was it the mentor approached you? Did you, like, what was the dynamic? How did that transpire?
So it was a friend of the family who had heard that I was good at math.
Okay.
That's all he knew. And he owned an engineering firm. And we had lunch. And it's unbelievable. You have to think about this. When you're meeting somebody and you're sitting across the table from them, you can meet them one time and you could impact their life forever. So this was over 40 years ago. And he said to me, Rick, I heard you're good at math. If you get an engineering degree from college, you could become a doctor, you could become a lawyer, you can work on Wall Street, you can live over here in Manhattan, because I grew up just outside Manhattan. Yeah. And he said it'll teach you how to think, especially about business. And he said it'll train your mind a different way. So anytime somebody asked me after that age, what are you going to do with your life? I said, I don't know, but I'm going to get an engineering degree because I could be a doctor, a lawyer, I could work on Wall Street, I could be a business person. And the reality is, at Rutgers, when I went there in the early 80s, Rutgers engineering was incredibly difficult, especially for a kid from a public school. And my 2 roommates failed out. But the reality was that. The reality was it taught me how to think, it taught me how to work hard, it taught me how to analyze things, and I got an industrial engineering degree, and we were in and out of businesses. So not only was I learning all the engineering principles, but I was in and out of businesses. So what happened after college, I was able to get a job on Wall Street, and I worked for a company in which we bought and sold distressed bankrupt companies and distressed bonds of bankrupt companies. And man, I remember just from an early age, in my mid-20s, being able to analyze balance sheets better than anybody else. And so I think it's really important at an early age to decide to do difficult things. I'm sure you've all heard the quote, if you do really hard things, your future will be easier. If you do really easy things, your future will be hard.
Yeah, it's like pick your hard, right? You could do easy hard or hard easy. And most people, they choose the easy hard route. And when they're in their 50s or their 60s, like life got so much more difficult. because they did it easy in the beginning, like exercising, nutrition, like positive mentality, meditation, having the work ethic in business in your 20s, so you can like just immerse yourself and learn. It's incredible you had the self-awareness to realize that. And a lot of that comes from the mentorship though. And I know that you preach this importance of mentorship. How do you even know what type of mentor is right for you? I know values are important, but like speak into like, how do you even find that right mentor?
Well, I got lucky with my first mentor, but also I think it's really important that people understand what I'm about to say. I think every human being, when they're born, their DNA is aligned a certain way, and it's aligned with a set of values. And there's an old Vedic astrology statement. I don't know if it's true, but it sounds cool, which I'm going to repeat it. It says, on the day that a child is born, there's a star that lights up somewhere in the universe. And on that star is imprinted that person's values and their purpose.
Wow.
And here's what happens. I believe that every human being has values and purpose that are consistently aligned with their DNA. And we go through life almost like we're in a dark room with the lights off. Instead of saying, wait a minute, let me peel the onion, let me find out why I'm here. What's my purpose? Mm-hmm. And this quote's been bantered around a lot recently during COVID from Mark Twain, who said the two most important days of a human being's life are, one, the day you're born, mm-hmm. and two, the day you find out why. And people repeat that quote often, but the why is your purpose. Wouldn't it be important to find out what it is now? Yeah. Write it down now, peel the onion and figure out what your purpose is. And it's already a part of you. You don't have to go out and find your purpose. It's not like finding a spouse. It's already here. Somebody's not going to hit you over the head, Jared, and go, here's your purpose. No, it's already inside of you. So I think it's very, very, very important for every human being to figure out what their purpose is, write it down, start making decisions in their life consistent with that purpose. That's number one. Number two, values-based decision making. Yeah. So in my teens, I watched my siblings. I had 6 older siblings. I watched my family. I watched my friends. I lived in North Jersey. And I just started thinking, you know, it's really interesting how if we figure out what our purpose is and what our values are, our life's going to be easy.
Yeah.
Now, I say that. I wrote my values down when I was 16. And here's the point. I violated those values many, many times. And every single time I did, I got in trouble. Yeah. It may not be today. It might not be tomorrow. But you will pay. Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting. If you or anybody watching this could just take the time to write down the list of values that are aligned with your DNA, guess what happens? It's magic. Yeah. And imagine making every decision from this point forward compounded in alignment with your values. But what typically happens is people go through life making decisions that are random in nature, inconsistent. You know, who do you marry? Who do you partner with? Who are you friends with? What organizations do you belong to? Shouldn't all of those be values aligned? Yeah. And I'll take it a step further. In the book, Who's in Your Room, which is a book that I co-authored, we talk about the doorman principle. Yeah. And the doorman principle is imagine that you have an imaginary doorman at the door to your life, and everybody comes through that door, every person, every idea, every gadget, everything. Imagine if there was a doorman sitting there saying, wait a minute, hold on, don't come in the room. Let me look at your values first. And they go, Jared, that doesn't align. That doesn't align. That doesn't align. And what do you say? But Rick, I'm going to make so much money. Yeah. So every single time me, you, or you choose opportunity, i.e. money, over values, we pay every time. And I use the doorman all the time to say things like, you know what? I can't be on your board because my doorman won't allow me to do it. They're like, well, who the hell's your doorman? So you could blame it on a third party. Yeah.
It's so important. This was a lesson you shared with me years ago. And every time that I have violated my doorman, because my doorman knows my values, every time I let somebody else into my life that wasn't aligned with my values, it led to a negative outcome. And sometimes really extreme negative outcomes, like painful, unnecessary experiences, because I didn't stay true to what I told my doorman. Do values change? Does somebody that write down the values when they're 16, do they change? Do they evolve? Do they get clear? Have your values changed from the point that you were 16?
That's a really, really good question. I think that we all have primary values. I also think that there are values like, you could say, the 10 Commandments, or values about being a nice person. There's universal values. But as it relates to an individual, I think that we have core values that don't change. I'll give you an example. Everybody has one primary core value, and for me, it's simplicity. Every day, almost every minute of every day, I'm thinking, how can I make this more simple? Which is why maybe I got an industrial engineering degree. But I think everybody should know what's their primary value. And my son asked me, he's 14, he said, Dad, isn't family one of your values? And I said, yeah. He goes, why isn't family number one? Why is simplicity number one? And I said, because I could not be present to you. I could not have family dinners every night. I could not have a date night on Tuesday night after family dinner with one of my 4 kids if I didn't value simplicity, right? And so I would encourage everybody listening, what is that primary value for you? And I want to take it to the next level. Actually, let me back up and say, yes, values can change in projects, in families, in companies. You could start with a set of values, and then when you hit growth, you might change them. So yeah, they could change. I don't think your primary values as an individual can change. But I do think, and I actually wrote them down here because I want to make sure that I leave you with this. When I walk into any situation, a new company, a new relationship, a new venture, I think, how can we imprint these 4 values onto that idea? And the 4 values are simplicity, probability, leverage, and permanence. And permanence I talked about for a long time. I added it to the primary 3 in the last 2 years. So simplicity means keeping things as simple as possible. That's obvious. I'm not going to go deeper into that. Number 2 is probability. What does that mean? Probability is making decisions that increase the probability of hitting the stated outcome. So if I want to be married for life, which I do, I wouldn't marry somebody that's been married 6 times because that wouldn't increase that probability. If I want to raise independent entrepreneurial 18-year-olds, I wouldn't give them a lot as kids. I would make them earn their way because the objective is independent entrepreneurial 18-year-olds or a long-term marriage. Same thing in business. I want to make decisions that increase the probability of X, going public, or selling the company for $1 billion or whatever it is. But I often find that people do the exact opposite. They make short-term decisions that radically decrease the probability. So number 1, simplicity. Number 2, probability. Number 3, leverage. What's that? We all have existing relationships, existing technology, existing strategy, existing investments, existing whatever. Leverage those first. So too often we have a business idea and we're taking a flight across the country to meet somebody we never knew before. That's insane. Leverage people near you. Get people to come to you when it comes to business. You know, if you're looking for a business partner or a marriage partner or a relationship partner, find people that you already know and ask them. Leverage your network. And then the last one is really important. I talked about it my entire life, but I never added it to my primary 4 values for any venture, and that's permanence. What does permanence mean? Well, if you think about it, if you start a company and you say, this is our permanent business strategy, think Southwest Airlines. What happens is we're all over the place. And as an example of permanence, my wife and I, when I found out that she was pregnant with our first child 15 years ago now, and we have 4. I started really late in life. My kids are 8, 10, 12, and 14. I said, honey, why don't we create a permanent structure for our family? And we created 35 pods of information, which is our wedding vows, our family values, our rituals, the Sapio family way. We created a family crest, and what does it mean? And then we turned it into a dinner placemat, family dinner placemat. And so basically, on our dinner table, you know, if we have 10 people over, we'll have 10 of them out. It's our family dinner placemat. And familyplacemat.com if you want to check it out. And it's permanent. So our kids, from the day they're born, they understand what their values are. They're not changing. They understand what our rituals are. They're not changing. They understand what we do at family dinners. Now, I talk about this permanent structure because I believe every organization needs that. Every church, every nonprofit, every startup, every long-term business. A permanent aspect to it, especially in this world of short-termness, which I think is killing us. I read somewhere that we're taking 6 billion pills a month, just in America, for mental stuff.
Wild, absolutely. So with these 4 values, how do you hold yourself accountable to embedding them in all domains of your life? Because from my experience, I've had values as well, and I'm very clear on what they were from a very early age. And what led me to even figure out what they were was an event, like yours was your father's passing and this mentor. Like my parents went through this vicious divorce when I was 5 years old, and it just put me on this path to understand why. Like, why do I think the way I think? What drives me? Like, I was a different kid. Like, I did not look at the world through the same perspective as my peers. I was committed to my health really early on. I was listening to personal development when I was 10 years old. I started meditating, I don't even know why, at 11. Like, I just immersed myself in anything that would give me the edge. And what I realized was my values have to show up in all domains. How do you hold yourself accountable to doing that?
It's very hard, as you know, to hold yourself accountable. So my kids know what my values are, my wife knows what my values are, my employees know what my values are, and I tell them, I say this to my sons, I've got 3 sons and a daughter, actually I tell them all, if you see daddy not honoring his values, kick him in the shins. So the more you tell people, here's what I stand for, here's my purpose, they'll remind you back. So about 20 years ago, I always thought that my purpose was to inspire people. And the reality was about 20 years ago, I hired a consultant that I worked with. And we went into a log cabin of all places in Colorado that we rented. And I thought it was going to take a week. But the reality was, I said, Mike, I don't want to leave here without my purpose statement written out. And the first thing that came out of my mouth was, I exist to inspire entrepreneurship in other people. And an entrepreneur to me is anyone who takes responsibility for outcomes. So he had rooms of the house filled with white paper with all these notes, and we came back to that's your purpose, Rick. Your purpose is to inspire entrepreneurship in others. And again, an entrepreneur is someone who takes responsibility for outcomes. It doesn't matter if you're at 0 or you have $1 billion. When you're taking responsibility, you're being an entrepreneur. Here's my point. Everybody watching this, you already know what your purpose statement is. Yeah. But write it down, tell everyone around you. You already know what your values are. Write them down, write what they mean to you, and tell everybody around you, and the people around you will hold you accountable. Believe me, when I am getting outside my values or purpose, my wife will remind me, my kids will remind me, my accountability partners will remind me.
But how does it work in an organization, right? Let's say there's a company, like a few hundred employees, and let's say the founder is operating out of their values. Do you recommend that in a business like that, anyone should be able to speak through a value in order to help the founder or someone above them recognize that they're out of values?
Of course, in an ideal world, people should have the ability to tell the founder or the leadership team that they're outside of integrity for whatever reason. But unfortunately, the world doesn't work that way. But it would be cool if you're leading an organization and you're watching this, why not say, here's what the organization stands for, here's what I stand for, here's our purpose statement, here's our values. If we all march in the same direction against the same, beat to the same, we march to the beat of the same drum, all of us are going to be more successful. So I think it's incredibly important that leadership makes a declaration like that. And then the people have an opportunity to say, here's where I'm out of alignment, here's where the company's out of alignment, here's where you're out of alignment, leadership team. I think it is, as we say in the book, it is the secret to success. Yeah. It really is. It makes so much sense, but so few people do it. Why? Because we get up in the morning and the damn device is screaming at us all these things that are completely not aligned with us. Yeah. And we let that damn device have control over us. Yeah. Flush it down the toilet. I bet your life will change overnight.
So you don't realize this, but when I first launched Project 10K, the first thing I did was I wrote my values because of you. Like, this is an influence you've had over me. I wrote them down. It's a word together. It's an acronym, and each letter has meaning, and each is defined intently, and everybody has to memorize what together actually stands for. The reason I did this is because we have a rather complicated business model, although we have found a way to now create simplicity around it. But we have founders around the world. We have 140 companies in 1 year. And I'm like, we need values that our co-founders know, that our investors in those companies know, that our team members know, that our executive leadership knows, so that when anyone is operating outside the values, they can speak through the value. So one of them is timing is of the essence. So if a member of our team says they're going to do something in a certain time frame and they don't do it, all we have to say is, Bob, timing is of the essence. It's not an argument. It's not a battle. They're not taking it personally. They signed, we call it our code, their values. And as a result, it's a way that we can now all communicate and create harmony. The benefits are exponential, like exponential, because we have founders now that know our values, and it's the same values they've signed when they said yes to working with us, so everybody's on the same page. What other benefits do you see from businesses or just human beings being that clear on their values, enforcing them, not negotiating against them, and then declaring them, telling everyone around them?
Well, first of all, I commend you on doing this.
Thank you for sharing it.
Your only job as the leader is to beat the drum and never stop on the values. What are the benefits? Here's what happens. When you're crystal clear on your values and you're crystal clear on the purpose of the business, you attract like-minded clients. You attract like-minded employees. You attract like-minded communities. Think about it. To use an example that I used in a TED Talk I did, when John F. Kennedy said we're going to send a man to the moon and return him safely to Earth by the end of the decade of the 60s. What happened? I think it was 8 years later. Machinery was invented. All kinds of things that came together because thousands of entrepreneurs and engineers heard that. So like-minded people came together to help that vision come true. And purpose and values are similar in that intent. I'm sure you're clear on the purpose of your organization as well. And so what happens is the benefit is you just attract like-minded people and you start building a moat around the business, an impenetrable moat. When you think about, how does Apple sell their products for far more than their competitors, and they're the same product?
Yeah.
It's because people are so loyal to the brand that they'd rather pay double for, an electronic device from Apple. And what happens is that creates a moat. And I read somewhere, I don't know if it's still true today, but Apple had like 80% of all the profits in the entire mobile phone industry globally, one company. So that means 20% of the profits are shared by 75 other companies. Wow. So that's why there's a massive benefit.
So what are your thoughts on, like with a vision or a purpose, we call it a moonshot. It's really significant. Like for us, build, scale, sell 10,000 tech companies over the next 10 years. We declare it, we are hyper clear on our values, they're non-negotiable, and what we've done is what you just shared. We've attracted people to not just want to support, to fully immerse themselves in it, to find a way to co-author a story. So for an entrepreneur that has this vision, and it's really significant, when they look in the mirror, they almost feel silly because it's so big. How do you help them overcome that? Because that might just be the magnet that brings exactly what they want to the table.
Well, here's what you're doing, which is I love, is clarity. When you're clear on what we talked about earlier, number one, the 4 values that we look for in organizations, you have simplicity. Mm-hmm. It's relatively straightforward and simple. Now, simple doesn't mean easy. Mm-hmm. It's simple to lose weight. You just eat less and exercise more, but it's not easy. So simplicity. Probability. You're so clear in where you're headed that increases the probability of hitting that objective. Leverage. You're leveraging your community. Mm-hmm. And then permanence is the 4th value. You've got a permanent framework that you're operating from. Now, Jared, I would encourage you, don't change anything. Yeah. Your job as the leader is to beat that drum, beat those values. Together is awesome. I love the acronym, and I would encourage everybody to have an acronym like that. My kids, our acronym is our last name, and we've got values associated with each one that they've memorized. So
I wanted Rick to come on the show because I know for me what value-based decision making has done. I know for me when I said these are our values, they're just non-negotiables. They're actually fireable offenses. Like we give somebody a warning, like, hey, you're operating outside of value by just speaking through the value. But if they keep on doing it, like there is just no place within the company, because that's what drives the company, is the clarity around our values. It's the clarity and the certainty around our moonshot. And no one person can violate it, because once one person does, it gives other people the permission to as well. You've impacted my life in more ways than I've ever even explained to you. But in my current venture, literally, this was the first thing I did. I got a name, I declared my values. That was it. And it would have went the other way around. I just thought of the name first. But I declared the values. And there's 2 people on the team now. Now there's hundreds of people on the team. And the reason we have the team we have is because of the certainty around those values. How can our NASDAQ community connect with you, learn more about you, and get involved in things that you're doing?
It's simple. Just go to our website, mutualcapitalalliance.com. Thanks for having me, Jared. I enjoyed it.
Appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Show up for our next episode. Tech Talk with Jared Yellen. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.